I really appreciate everyone being part of this today. I'm grateful for all the first responders that are here standing with us. I appreciate all the leaders who have been advocating for this for a very long time. I first want to recognize and thank Congressman Dan Donovan. He's not here, but he's really been a champion for this bill, and it's made a difference because we need this to be bipartisan. Nearly 14 years ago, when our nation was under attack, and 2,977 people had their lives taken from them, thousands of heroes came to Ground Zero on September 11th and the days that followed. In our darkest hours, our brightest lights shone. They were our first responders who ran up burning buildings while everyone else was running to safety. They were people from all walks of life who scrambled through the rubble of the Twin Towers, the Pentagon, and Shanksville, Pennsylvania, looking for survivors, and then looking for remains. They answered the call of duty when our nation was under attack, and they deserve to be treated by Congress as the heroes that they are. Sadly, now, 14 years later, these men and women, these ultimate patriots, are suffering for their sacrifice. Some are sick, others are dying, and far too many have already been lost due to the toxins they breathed in from the rubble at Ground Zero. More than 33,000 9/11 responders and community survivors, including area residents, workers, and children harmed by the disaster, have an illness or an injury that was caused by the attacks and the aftermath. And over 2/3 of these men and women have more than one illness. So far, over 3,700 9/11 responders and survivors have been found to have 9/11 related cancer. And at least 1,700 heroes have already been laid to rest by their families from various illnesses, including James Zadroga, who we named the bill after. In fact, approximately 700 people have died from 9/11 related illnesses since we passed the 9/11 Zadroga bill in 2010. It's hard to believe, but it's true, that more police officers have died from 9/11 related illnesses than on 9/11. Like John Feal has said, these cancers and illnesses these heroes have don't expire, and neither should their health care program. They have earned the care and compensation they deserve. No families should be going bankrupt because they were a hero on 9/11. People don't realize that the death toll didn't stop on that tragic day. It continues to march onwards as brave men and women suffer from terrible cancers and illnesses. Congress has an undeniable, inescapable, moral obligation to provide these heroes with the sufficient health care and proper compensation. I was very proud more than 4 years ago when Congress came together, led by our united New York congressional delegation, Congresswoman Maloney, Congressman Nadler, Congressman King, and Senator Schumer, and fulfilled that moral obligation by passing the James Zadroga 9/11 Health and Compensation Act. But our work is not done. These critical 9/11 programs are set to begin to expire this year, and they must be renewed. Not for another short-term fix, but a real, permanent solution for these men and women. These two Zadroga programs should be permanent, just like similar programs that Congress has passed to provide health care and compensation for black lung disease for coal miners and for the impact of radiation on nuclear workers that helped defend the country by building the atomic weapons in the 50s and 60s, or who now work in the nuclear industry. Both of these programs are permanent and fully funded. This one should be no different. Because if we don't do it, Congress will be walking away from our duty to stand by these heroes. They still need our help. Mount Sinai runs 2 of the 7 clinical centers for excellence, which provide the monitoring and treatment for responders that 9/11 Health and Compensation Act funds. Mount Sinai's 2 locations combined see the majority of first responders. 22,300. Between 600 and 900 patients are monitored each month. About 100 of these are seen here on Staten Island. We can't turn our backs on our heroes. So even though the fight is ahead of us, I am optimistic. I'm optimistic because we have Democrats and Republicans from the Senate and the House working together hand in hand to ensure that Congress does not turn its back on our heroes. But this burden should not be on our heroes. They shouldn't have to travel to Washington to lobby Congress for access to the care and treatment that they desperately need and deserve. It shouldn't be on them. It should be on us to do the right thing. And it shouldn't take a Christmas miracle this time to make it happen. We must meet our responsibilities head on, because if we fail, many heroes continuing to suffer from terrible 9/11 related diseases will be left on their own. That cost, in terms of human suffering, and what it means to our values as a nation is too much to bear. They're counting on us, and it would be shameful as a nation if we didn't come through. So now I'd like to introduce our next speaker, Borough President James Oddo.
If you were an elected official representing this community in September of 2001, you spent the fall and the winter attending wakes and memorials and funerals. Some of those funerals, we buried just the belongings of the people we lost because there were no remains. If you were an elected official representing Staten Island in September of 2001, you spent the next 12, 18, 24 months going to street renamings for the folks we lost. And at each of those events, I and other elected officials echoed what was being said across this country to the family members and the friends of those we lost. And we told them we would be there for them. And in the audience at each of those events were the colleagues of the ones we lost. And we told them that we would be there for them. They would literally come to street renamings and wakes after being on the pile. And we said to them, we have an obligation to you and we will fulfill it. That obligation doesn't end in 2015. That obligation does not end. And thank goodness for people like Senator Gillibrand for doing the right thing. If we don't live up to that commitment, it won't be the original sin of this nation, but it will be an enduring sin on our soul. We have our 9/11 event at Postcards this year. We're focusing in on the word one, because we want to come together as one Staten Island. And on the inside of the invite, we steal some lyrics from the song One from the band U2. And they talk about we get to carry each other. Carry each other. The folks that Patty represents and the other first responders literally carried each other that day. Our obligation now and in the future is to continue to carry those folks and their family members. Again, I want to thank Senator Gillibrand for being the leader on this. No community, and many communities were hit hard that day, but probably no community harder than this borough. And when you recall, even though it's 14 years ago, those vivid memories of each of those wakes, of each of those families, of the brothers and sisters who came to mourn the ones they lost, and you sit back and you think about where we are, you truly appreciate the efforts of Senator Gillibrand to make sure that we live up to our obligation and we do right. Thank you, Senator.
Our next speaker is City Council Member Debi Rose.
Good morning. I just had to stop by this press conference. I'm supposed to be in City Hall, but it was so important that Senator Gillibrand thought enough to come to Staten Island to honor Dr. Crane and Mount Sinai with her presence to say that we would not forget. You know, at 9/11, we made a vow to never forget to never forget the sacrifices that our first responders made. And now it's time for us to honor that commitment. That was not a conditional vow. We said never. And so the fact that the Zadroga Act could run out is not a commitment and is not keeping this vow. And so on 9/11, I was not an elected official. I was running to be an elected official. And on that day, when we found out what had happened, my uncle, who was my treasurer, ran from my campaign headquarters to the World Trade Towers. And every time, and he worked on that pile, and every time he has a cough or he's not feeling well, we worry that it's some residual effect of what he sustained by working at the World Trade Center. We shouldn't have to worry about that. We shouldn't have to worry about if it is something that he would not have coverage, he would not have the support of our country where they vowed to make this sacrifice for. So I just want to thank you so much, Senator Gillibrand, for keeping this front and center. I am going to introduce a resolution in City Council to ensure that the City Council of New York gets behind the reauthorization bill and that we fight with all that we have to make sure that this becomes a permanent bill. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Dr. Michael Crane, the Director of the World Trade Center Health Program Clinical Center at Mount Sinai.
Thank you, Senator. Good morning, everybody. The first thing I want to say is a cloudy day in Staten Island, a little bit of rain. But you don't need a lot of sunshine when you got Senator Gillibrand, am I right? I'm going to talk a little bit about the technicalities of the program because I guess I'm a technical guy. I can't fix a computer, but I like to pretend. There's a Zadroga Act. Why should we bother with the Zadroga Act? Well, when there was an attack on the country, attack on the United States of America, it makes sense to have American dollars help those people who got hurt. Pure and simple. Okay? And it got done, it got passed, and it's actually a really good piece of legislative work. It's beneficial, it's cost efficient, and it looks to the future. I'm just going to talk a little bit about all those things. So let's talk about beneficial first. First, I want to tell you about our program. Yes, we have 22,000 people. Unfortunately, we have 1,000 patients now who have cancer. Almost 10% of them have two cancers. And the toll is going up. I authorize or certify or attempt to certify in the parlance of the Zadroga Act pretty much all the cancers. And yesterday I sent off requests for certification of 7 more. And that's the way it is. 5 failed. The 15 people who were healthy on 9/11 are now coming down with cancer. It's a huge toll. And that toll alone should tell us that we need a monitoring program to keep an eye on people. Zadroga gives us a monitoring program. We can see people every year. In addition to the monitoring, we can add cancer screening. Cancer screening, like lung cancer screening, which has been shown in peer-reviewed journals to save lives. To save lives. We can do colon cancer screening, also which saves lives, on a population of people who we know are at risk for cancer. Makes sense. Beneficial. Cost efficient. Looks to the future. I'm going to keep saying that, so maybe you'll start chanting it. But I know you won't. It also helps us to gather lots of information, okay, about people, such that we can understand our population. You know, if somebody in North Carolina comes to see me once a year, gets lupus, or rheumatoid arthritis, or another kind of more rare disease for a male patient they have. How am I going to know that? How in God's name am I going to know that unless they have a way of getting me that information? And the best way to get that is to do it directly for an exposed population like this. Do it directly in front of a physician who knows what he or she is talking about, so that an examination gets done and you get to know what's happening. Then you take that data and you can see whether these events are happening at a rate that is greater than those who are not exposed in our population. Simple science, simple epidemiology. Once again, very, very beneficial, very cost efficient. Okay? And it's right there in the Zadroga Act, so that's another thing that's good about Zadroga. Treatment. I can't treat anybody who doesn't have a certified World Trade Center condition. Okay? That's a little bit harsh because there's a lot of people, just as we get older, who get illnesses. Folks get diabetes. Folks get heart disease. There may or may not be a relationship between that in our population and the exposure. We don't know yet. We're looking at that. That data will come out of the monitoring program. But for now, I have to treat only those conditions in patients who we've shown their illness to have a relationship to the World Trade Center exposure. For a guy like me, every day that means when folks come in, new patients, I have to trace their illness back now 14 years. You go back in time, you find out what happened to them way back when. You get records from their outside doctors. You look and see if you can make the connection to those World Trade Center related conditions. And then if we have that, we can get them certified and treated. Is that a pain in the butt? Yes, it is sometimes. But you know, what it's done is has made the program cost efficient, so we are certain that we treat those illnesses that are related to World Trade Center as well. So very strongly cost efficient on that. Procedures. I authorize every procedure that goes through my program. You know, myself or my deputy, Laura Crowley, or one of my nurse practitioners. Every single one. Cost control, paramount. But we make sure that the right procedures are done. For cancer patients, we go by guidelines, national guidelines, NCCN guidelines. Everything is consistent, everything is controlled, everything is high quality. Cost efficient again, we're now switching to generics. We're going to save millions of dollars on prescription medicines because we're going to go into a generics first policy now that we understand that our patients with World Trade Center conditions can tolerate them. Finally, Zadroga talks about research. I would love to tell you, standing here, that I know what in God's name is going to happen next time, in the next few years with this population. Remember, what came down, what burnt, what fell, what was breathed is never going to be known. It was a combination of toxic materials that never existed before, may never exist again, and we just don't know what was in there. So for me to stand here and predict that I understand what's going to happen to the population exposed to WTC, I just can't. So we have to have research to look into these conditions, look into the what's current in our population, what's happening at a higher rate in our population, and make us understand what we have to do to treat that, to bring that under control. Zadroga also looks at the long term, right? I mean, Zadroga understands that if you're exposed to asbestos, you're not even going to show effects in 15 years. It's going to be 20, 30, even 40 years later. All of this is understood in this piece of legislation, which is beneficial, cost-effective, and looks to the long term. So what do we got to do here? What makes sense? Let's reauthorize it. Let's reauthorize the drugs. So we'll be looking at the long term and be able to take care of all you guys and have this continue to be the home that we need, the medical home for these types of illnesses. I've talked too much. Thanks a lot.
Our next speaker is Pat Lynch, the president of the New York City Patrolmen's Benevolent Association.
Thank you, Senator, and more importantly, our first responders are in this room. You know, we're coming up to the anniversary of September 11th, and the TV networks and the channel 13s of our different boroughs are going to show those specials, and they're going to play the clips and the videos of September 11th. You know, they'll start with the plane hitting the tower, then the gas when the second plane hits and the towers fall. But what always strikes folks, even folks that were there and they watch it, or folks that may not be, or even our younger folks who it just may be history to them, is they watch as people streamed north. There was a confident stride in police officers and first responders pushing through the crowd. going towards the towers, not stopping, helping along the way. But while everyone else was going north, they headed south. And that went on for days and months and weeks and continued until we did the best we could to bring our family members home. And I mean family members, I mean everyone that was in those buildings, not just those that wore a shield on their chest. Well, as you come to this center here and we have these press conferences trying to get the money that's a moral obligation to take care of our first responders, some of the faces change. Some of them are the same. But what happens is many of our first responders are at home, they're sitting on their couch, and the cough may get just a little bit worse, and the worry gets worse. The lump may get a little bit bigger, the breathing gets a little more difficult, and the pain gets a little more pronounced. And then those same men and women that had that confident stride come here and struggle to come up the stairs because they need the treatment. And some of those faces are new. Some of those faces are out on patrol right now and don't know that a year from now, a month from now, 2 years from now, they'll be struggling up those stairs. So we talk about an obligation. We do. We have a moral obligation. We feel strongly about it. This obligation is for those that were there on September 11th. Equally important, it's for those young police officers and firefighters that are out on patrol now to know that we take our moral obligation serious. And if this was ever to happen again, those same men and women will have that same confident stride, knowing that they'll be taken care of, and more importantly, that we'll take care of their families. This must be done.
Our next speaker is Iya Mejia, the Director of DC 37, Safety and Health Department.
Thank you. Again, my name is Iya Mejia, and I'm the Director of the Safety and Health Department for District Council 37. On behalf of our Executive Director, Henry Garrido, and the 110,000 members, I want to thank the Senator for their leadership. DC 37 has thousands of members who responded on 9/11 and the weeks and the days and the months that followed, and many of them are now in the program. So this is very critical for us and very important for the membership. We all remember 9/11, but those who responded to the terrorist attacks live with more than a memory. They live with the physical and the psychological tolls of their heroic efforts. Those who rescued, recovered, and cleaned up the aftermath of the attacks are now experiencing major health problems from their exposures to the many toxins in the air and on the surfaces. And I'm not talking just about New York City. I'm talking about the Pentagon and also Shanksville crash site in Pennsylvania. People are dependent on the reauthorization of the act, and Congress cannot stand by and just let it expire. The consequences are frightening for many who will be left without the medical care and the treatment that they so greatly deserve. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is John Feal, President of the Feal Good Foundation.
So let me tell you what hasn't changed since 2010. The recipe, the foundation, and the blueprints for success. And what am I talking about? I'm talking about the leadership from Senator Gillibrand and the New York delegation, Carol Maloney, and Peter King. I'm talking about the advocates. I'm talking about the union members and the other organizations like the 9/11 Health Watch and the Citizens to Extend the Zadroga Bill. So, the blueprint, the leadership is there. And it's in place now. And we've been successful since January of this year. And come September, with a little help from our friend back in 2010 from The Daily Show, we plan on going back to DC and getting this bill reauthorized. But let me tell you what's changed. More people have gotten sick, and more people have died. And that onus is on everybody, every doctor, every nurse, every physician's assistant, every elected official, every union leader. The onus is on us to ensure that this bill gets authorized and that we work as a united front moving forward. If the bill was not to get passed, when it expires in October this year and runs out of money next year, everybody right now, focus on these men right here. And imagine them not here in the next year, 2 or 3, because they'd all be gone and dead. Dead. Because Congress failed to act in a timely fashion. This room would be 3/4 full. And the onus would be on us because we could not get a bill passed. But I bet you my one kidney, with this woman's leadership, and the advocates and the organizations and the unions working together, come by the end of this year, we get this bill passed, and we live as much as happily as we can ever. Thank you.
We have 2 patients from the Mount Sinai Clinic. First, we're going to hear from Joseph Weibel.
Good evening, good afternoon, good morning. For the first time, I have nothing to say. You guys have been speechless. I can't even put you guys in your underwear. All these tricks that I work. I was taught to keep everything inside me. So you got me at a vulnerable moment. So, What do you guys want to know?
Why does this program matter?
How you feeling?
All right. Back in 2002, I started getting caught. I was a big boy. I was 236 pounds. I was very strong. I started spitting up blood. Started getting caught. I got weaker. I started losing weight. I went to 236 to 177 in 4 months. Took my police captain, basically at gunpoint, to get me to the doctor. So they got me to the doctor, and I started getting treated, and I had all these issues, and they sent me to the World Trade Center up in the city. And I went for a short time. I stopped going. I'm like, okay, I'm healed. I'm seeing my own doctors, and I'm still, I still have my issues, but I have my doctors, so I feel like I'm okay. I'm not getting better, but I have my doctors. I feel like I'm protected. So I met the police surgeon in Staten Island here, and he said, Joe, you have to go back to the World Trade Center. I'm like, I don't want to. I said, I didn't have a, it's very far away, I don't really want to go. She goes, no, the one in Staten Island, very good. So I met Dr. Scherz in Oddo, and I got to say, she changed my life. It's hard, it's hard.
It's hard to talk about yourself.
This guy's not.
I'll talk to anybody what I want. She was able to get everything. Every one of my doctors, she pulled everything in. Joe, you don't need to take this, you don't need to take that. And, as a police officer, I was a police officer from 2000 to 2012. As a police sergeant, as a cop, I was an aggressive cop. I'm the first guy to go through the door. As a police officer, it's the same way. You lead by example. If I want to do it, I'm a hunter. I'm a dinosaur in this job. If I was still on this right now, you'd probably be after me for a long time. I'm not a computer person, but. I didn't want to leave, I didn't want to let the World Trade Center disease beat me, It's a life-altering thing. I'm CPAP machines and I'm on an APAP machine. You can't roll over to kiss your wife because you got a machine on you. I never cry, I'm sorry. Why is it killed? I coach Little League. I get in coughing fits with the boys. I'm not even exerting myself. All of a sudden, you get a coughing fit. I got to sit on the fence. Parents come over to me like, "Do we have to call an ambulance for you?" "No, I'll be okay in a few minutes." just needs like 10 minutes to, your body's got to calm down. And you don't observe it. You don't do nothing. It comes over you. There's nothing you can do about it. It's got to pass. Just this is what you live with. It's what we have. And there's nothing I can do about it. We just maintain it. We do our best to get through our lives. We just if it wasn't for Dr. Chernover and the whole staff, and every doctor I've seen at Mount Sinai has been amazing. I can't even tell you, amazing. That's been one bad episode of any doctor that she has sent me to that I have a bad experience with. It's just been purely amazing. Every doctor she has sent me to has changed part of my life to a better. They've changed this, they've changed that, they made me feel a little better here, a little better here, a little better here. Little increments, but I've felt a little better here, a little better there. And I owe my last, 7 years of my life to this program. And anybody else wants to say anything, I'll be inside in the corner.
Our next patient from Mount Sinai Clinic is Charles Diaz.
On 9/11/01, I was a captain with the New York City Sanitation Police out here in Staten Island. And when I got word that the towers were hit, myself and my inspector, we took off for the towers. Went down, he went his way, I went mine. I tried to rescue as many people as I could, and then the towers came down. I laid there waiting to die, choking on the dust and the debris that was in the air. I made it out of there with a broken arm. Later on, I started to get sick, getting some stomach issues, some breathing issues, sinus issues. But a few years ago, if it wasn't for Dr. Chernover, she diagnosed me with myeloid leukemia and started my treatments. And I'm going to Mount Sinai, and I don't know how long I have. I hope I have a long time, but I just want to thank her and the program. They're amazing people here. I don't know what I would do without them. Thank you very much, John.
In the press forum, we're happy to take on-topic questions. We'll do off-topic separately. You can ask anybody here.
How many times have you had to reauthorize it?
We have the first authorization, this will be the second. The first time we passed the bill is a 5-year bill. And that's why we have to reauthorize it, and we're trying to reauthorize it permanently, so we never have to do this again.
Senator, the opposition, is it coming from Congress members from states that perhaps had less involvement in 9/11?
Right now, there's no opposition. We are trying to build support. Last time in the Senate, we passed it unanimously. We have bipartisan support. We have several Republican senators on the bill today, and our hope is to, again, pass it unanimously. It's not the kind of bill someone stands against, but there's also a lack of urgency often in Washington. So we are trying to make it understood by our colleagues that these men and women, they don't want uncertainty. They want to know that their doctors are here and will be here today, tomorrow, and the next day. And without that reauthorization and that permanent reauthorization, it creates uncertainty, and they certainly don't deserve that.
Senator, do you have bipartisan support for a permanent reauthorization or,
yes,
or a similar 5-year?
So we have Mark Kirk, Lisa Murkowski, we have Susan Collins, and we have Tom Cotton, all as original co-sponsors for the permanent reauthorization.
Can I just ask one of you, Mr. Diaz, what would happen if there's a Zadroga bill doesn't get passed? Do you know?
If you could, Mr. Diaz, if you could talk into the microphones for the supporters.
Well, I know just for the medication alone, I couldn't afford $20,000 a month. That's what's keeping me alive.
And if we didn't reauthorize it and the money wasn't provided, the doctors who work here would have to find another job. They wouldn't be able to know that they have a place here that is going to be paid for. And so all the specialists that we've developed over the last 5 years would have to move on with their careers and work somewhere else. It would be devastating for those who are in care today.
Dr. Creighton, do you want to
You
answer
can
the
also
same
speak to
question?
that too.
Well,
Yeah, what would happen if we just
So
reauthorized?
you would get caught in that terrible place between private insurance and workers' compensation, where literally you're a ping pong ball. It's a private illness, it's a work-related illness, bang, bang, bang. Meanwhile, the costs of $20,000 a month are building up and up and up. People are losing their houses. I mean, this is real. This is a real phenomenon. I can't tell you, my 1,000 cancer patients, the bills I see for those medications, simply incredible. $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 a month, 20 grand a month, not unusual at all. And it's a growing problem. And we cannot drop this ball. We can't. We have to keep this moving. We have to reopen.
Anyone else on topic? Can you explain why the other systems, workers' compensation, the fire department, police department, sanitation department, their existing coverage, the retirement coverage, the health benefits are insufficient, and therefore why the federal Zadroga program?
I can answer
Go
that.
ahead, tell us your story, your perfect example. Tell
I
us.
can answer that because when I first found out, I called my department, I called my health insurance. I said, it's a work-related issue, we're not touching you. We're not going to cover you.
Your private insurance said
Private
that.
insurance.
And then when you
GHI
went to
told me they
workman's
would.
comp, what did they say?
We don't have workman's comp with the city because we're self-insured.
Workman's comp
There is no
doesn't-
workman's comp with the city.
Workman's comp does not view environmental diseases. So there are still many 9/11 responders trying to get workman's comp today. So you have a better chance of working at Home Depot and have a box full on your head and get workman's comp than somebody who's sick and dying from a toxic illness from 9/11. So there's a lot of moving parts to that question. So, I mean, we could sit here and do another press conference on why 9/11 responders do not get that workman's comp. Obviously, cops and firefighters do not get that. They have a pension program. So, again, there's a lot of moving parts. But there's a 9/11 responder here today who's been battling for years. Jamie here went through it for years. He had to sue workman's comp. So it's an ongoing thing that we've been dealing with on the side while we're trying to get legislation passed. And also, more importantly, if the program closed, we can't go and get insurance because they're not going to take people with pre-existing conditions. It's just the way it is.
Last one?
I guess what did you just see as being the biggest obstacle to this bill going through again?
I'm actually quite hopeful it will go through again. And I think the biggest thing we fight against in Washington is a lack of empathy and a lack of urgency. So I need to tell these stories, and I need to make sure my colleagues understand what's at risk, who is suffering, why they're suffering, and why they have to do the right thing. And if I can get their attention and move them, they will support this bill. So I'm optimistic.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.